Yeah.
So,
oh, here's something I want to point out. So this structure in the background that looks kind of like a couple of houses. So they before the medieval period really began, before the Norman invasion of the Anglo-Saxons, there was a sort of a style of structure or style of community. I forget what the term is for it. I think it's called like a circle fort or something like that, where you would have a ring of either a raised portion of earth to act as a wall or a built wall around a couple of houses in a small community. And it looks like that's what this is, which is actually not accurate for the time. At this point, circle forts, so I think that's what they're called, but I could be wrong. But at this point, that style of construction of communities is out of fashion, or like just isn't practical anymore. So if that's what this is, which is what it kind of looks, it's hard to tell, but it kind of looks like one of these. That's pretty inaccurate.
yeah.
And at the same time, you see how the walls are made of stone.
Yeah.
In the 13th century, you see they've got all these trees around here, and they would have to have cleared a bunch of trees out to make this open space. So the fact that their walls are made of stone on this little country house is kind of inaccurate, because stone is expensive, especially if you have access to lumber. So they should have made this house out of something called wattle and door, which is a wooden framing with like a mixture of mud, dung, and hay to fill the gaps, and then whitewash over that.
As soon as you... Oh, go ahead.
Like, the fact that it's made of stone is just a bit too expensive for like country folk with a forest all around them.
As soon as you were like, they're surrounded by trees and it's made of stone, I knew where you were going. It's like they would have used what they had rather than going out.
If you live up in the mountains where you have like
where you have stone,
like that, and no trees, then it makes sense to make your house out of stone. Or if you're rich, it makes sense to make your house out of stone.
It's
like the city of Machu Picchu, which isn't like, that's way before this, but their buildings were all made of stone because they had no trees and they lived on a giant rock.
It's like whenever you're like, when you first spawn in Minecraft and you gotta like make your new house, you just make it out of like the first shit you dig up. It's like,
people were not making dirt houses back then. I mean, they kind of were, considering that door was made of mud and dung, so they kind of were making mud houses.
It's just a level above like the mud houses of Native Americans, just like one step above.
But the thatch roof is pretty realistic. They did have thatch roofs. Those were more common than wooden shingles or than slate, which I don't think they had slate quite yet. But they wouldn't have, like, see how the roof is made of those long pieces of thatch that go the whole length of the roof?
Yeah.
That's not really how it would happen. The way you would make a thatch roof is you have like a bundle of the hay, and then you would stack up those bundles all around the roof. And those bundles would be like this big, but they would not go the whole height of the roof. They would just be, you'd just see these tons of bundles all around the roof. So I'm sure there was probably a way to get these like long thatch roofs that cover the whole roof. But this house would be really expensive to make back in the 13th century. So the fact that a little farmhouse or like a farm community out in the middle of the woods is made of stone walls with long thatch roofs is a bit of a stretch for a little farm family.
And this is why I have Xavier, because I did know a little bit about the architecture, but I did not put it into my scripts to talk about it because I didn't know if the houses would be important. But Xavier was quick to spot that, and he was like, all right, we got to talk about this.
For all we know, this could be some rich merchant family that like has the best crops in the kingdom, and like they just have a little country house out here on the side of the road that got burned down. So you never know what the situation of a family is.
Well,
but in general,
If
a little
it's
country home, like a little farmhouse that owned by a peasant family, is not going to be made of stone with super long thatched roofs.
Yeah, well,
In
if
this
it
fashion
turns
when you're
out that
surrounded by wood.
if it turns out that this is like Wallace's dad's house,
Yeah, that would make a bit more
then that
sense.
could make
'Cause
sense
Wallace
because
is a thing.
he was like a landowner and like yeah, he had
Yeah,
some funds
like
to go around.
if you're a thane, like a lord, then that makes complete sense to make your house out of stone if you can afford it. So in that specific sense, yes. But assuming it's a peasant's home or like a little farmer's home who's not royalty at all or doesn't have a lot of money, that would be an expensive house.
Yeah.
All right, pause here. So
What's
could
up?
you go back to the scene where you can see their full bodies on the horses?
Yeah, let me try. Right there. That good?
Yep, that's fine. So, two things that I want to point out in this scene. One, everybody is for some reason covered in mud and dirt. And I guess for William, because he's a kid playing around in the mud, that kind of makes sense. But the adults should not be wearing, like, Malcolm Wallace is a thane of Scotland, meaning he's a landlord of Scotland. So he's nobility, he's got money. So he should not be covered in dirt and wearing dull colored clothing. So that's the first point, is that back in especially in the 13th and 14th century and into the 15th century, towards the mid to late medieval period, like the richer you are, the more colorful your clothing was, and you wanted to show off how colorful your clothing was if you could afford it, because dyes were expensive, especially if you had big, flowy garments that had a lot of fabric to cover.
You're telling me they
So,
couldn't just put it in a crafting table and get the dye?
so you usually had to import dyes from other places, like the East and stuff like that. So it was expensive to dye things. So if you were at Malcolm Wallace's social status, he would have like big, flowy, colorful garments that he would want to show off the amount of colors that he could afford to put together and how large and flowy his garments were. So that's one thing. The second thing would be, well, also that he would be clean, like I said before,
Mhm.
because he could afford to take a bath every now and then. Second thing would be, you see them wearing plaid kilts. And though tartans and a tartan versus plaid, tartan is the pattern, plaid is a fabric or garment made with the tartan pattern on it. So
I was wondering if you were going to bring up the tartans now or later.
yeah, well, this is the first time that we see it, so I'm going to bring it up now. So tartans have existed since the 4th century BCE, so they've been around for thousands of years, I guess, at this point. But belted plaid or plaid garments like this aren't really seen until the 16th century or so, 15th, 16th century. So it's not until the Renaissance that we actually see plaid clothing worn by Scottish nobility. So the fact that they're actually wearing clothes with plaid and that they're wearing kilts in the first place is very inaccurate. What they should be wearing is something called a hoopland. And a hoopland is like a dress, sort of. So at this time, men's and women's clothing was very similar. They all wore. I'm not going to go into too much detail about what the elements of clothing were at this time, but the outermost garment you would wear was usually either a very long length tunic if you were a guy, or you would wear a kirtle or a hoopland. And a kirtle and hoopland are both ankle length dress like garments that are very simple. A kirtle has fitted sleeves, while a hoopland has sleeves that hang down at the wrist, so they're fitted in the shoulder and then taper into a really long open wrist. And so, if you were rich, you would wear a hoopland to show that you could afford extra needless fabric that could hang down and you didn't have to get it dirty. So that's something that they would probably be wearing instead of whatever the heck. I don't know what they're. I can't even tell what the heck they're wearing in this. It's so vague. But they should be. He should be wearing something like a hoopland that's very bright and colorful and clean. I don't know if you want to superimpose a picture of a hoopland. I can find one for you after this.
Yeah, I'll try in editing. I was gonna point out as well. I know you said like plaid wasn't around yet, but we did talk about how tartans had been for a while. Haven't seen any sort of tartan yet for the Wallace clan. So
well, they are wearing, like you can see across their shoulders and in their kilts, they are wearing some tartan. I don't know what tartan it is. Like let me look up the.
As far as I could tell, the Wallace tartan looks a lot like the McDonald one, where it's black and red.
So yeah, the Wallace tartan is black and red with a yellow over check.
Yeah, which you can't see at all here. It's just green.
Is, green and brown.
Yeah. But I like how you were talking about like they're dirty. Like they're looking like Texans right now with the winter storm, like not being able to shower with no water.
Yeah, there's like this. I don't know where people get it from, but there's this huge misconception that everyone in the medieval period was, except for the king, was like super dirty and wore these dull colored clothes. But it was like there was so many bright colors that everybody wore. Even the merchant class and like the workers, unless you were a peasant, you would have access to some degree of color in your clothing. Like if you're a peasant, you might wear browns and grays and whatever color that the wool was when you sheared it off the sheep.
Mm-hmm.
But if you could afford any level of dye, then you would wear it. And in fact, in the high to late medieval period, because there was an epidemic of peasants and working class people being able to save up their money and afford to buy clothing and that was on the same level as the clothing of the nobility. And so they had to institute what are called sumptuary laws, which made it illegal for people of a certain social class to wear certain types of things. For example, if you were not nobility, you were barred from wearing gilded clothing. You couldn't have gold embroidered into your clothing unless you were of a certain social class, because poor people were dressing in the same clothes as rich people. So even if you were poor, that's not an excuse to be wearing dirty, ragged clothing. Like most poor people, of course, obviously did wear plain colors. But he's a lord of Scotland. He's a thane. He should be wearing like bright colors, a little bit of gilding, maybe, like blue, red, green, purple, yellow.
I love how passionate you're getting. Like he's a lord, like, and we're 2 minutes in, because that's gonna be me throughout this whole movie. I can already tell, because like Braveheart isn't even the name of William Wallace. Braveheart is about Robert Bruce. It's like Braveheart isn't even Wallace, but they named the movie Braveheart. We're 2 minutes in, Xavier. It's a 3-hour movie.
We might just have to make a different part for each hour of the movie.
Yeah. Remember, I asked you to come on and you said yes. You signed up for this, technically.
Where do you think you're going?
I'm going with you. Whoa. Pause.
Are you going to talk about how he's giving his sword away before going into battle?
Okay, well, no. Well, about the sword, a sword is like a Ferrari. Like if you had a sword, if you could afford a sword, you had to be rich because it cost about as much as a Ferrari does today. But on what I was gonna say is, see how William Wallace is not wearing anything on his legs.
Yeah.
Even if you were the poorest peasant, making clothing was free. like
You had pants, not shorts.
So they didn't have pants back then or short pants. What they had instead was called chausses, or chasseurs if you were French. But chausses were independent stockings made of wool that you
Yeah.
would put on each leg and then tie to your underwear, essentially, your brays, which were your underwear, with little straps called points. So you would have these wool stockings that you would wear, your chausses, on each leg. And that was part of the way that you would show off your colorfulness, is you would have either two different colored chausses, or you would have brightly colored. You could have them the same color or different colors, and they could be brightly colored or not. That's why, like, a lot of medieval characters are depicted wearing tights. They're not actually wearing tights; they're wearing wool chausses or hose. Or yeah, hose is the other word that you could use for them.
They were the first rendition of lingerie. Changed my mind.
Well, they were considered not outer garments, but they were not an undergarment. They were something you would show off.
Yeah.
If you wore shorter garments. But that's what you would wear instead of pants. And everybody wore these. Like, these were consistent until like the 1500s. This is what people wore from 1066 to 1500. This is what people wore on their legs. So, Jesus, these costumes are atrocious. And again with the potato sack. So was the woman her mother or his mother?
I would assume so.
She should be wearing her hair up in an updo, not down. Yeah, the mother should be wearing her hair done up. Especially
it's not his mother, because
either way,
otherwise this would be his sister.
Technically, none of these people are supposed to be peasants in history, because you wouldn't have peasants come to the funeral of a nobleman. Mm-hmm. So either way, she should have her hair done up in some sort of updo.
Did the priest give a poetic benediction?
Pardon, my lord. He asked me to come in his stead.
Pause right there, right now.
Sent for him, and he sends you.
Why does it not like to pause? Okay, there we go.
So, if we look at the king's outfit, for one, his cape is inspired by classical and Roman like stylings, which is not exactly what it would have looked like. And he wouldn't really be wearing a cape, he'd be wearing a colorful cloak. But also, you see what he's wearing on his chest?
Yeah.
So what that is supposed to be is called a coat of plates. And a coat of plates is what was worn before the development of steel plate armor, which is a 14th century invention, like a mid to late 14th century thing, is when steel plate armor came about. But a coat of plates is what you would wear before that. First of all, it looks pretty decent. It's supposed to be pieces of metal plate inside cloth or leather, so either gambeson or leather with metal plates inside of it, which it looks like that's what that is, leather with metal plates on the inside. But second of all, it should be worn underneath a surcoat or tabard. And so he should, if he's in combat uniform, be wearing a surcoat over it, which is like a long ankle or shin length tunic with no sleeves and your coat of arms on the front, or your colors and your coat of arms.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: he should not be in combat uniform
unless he's in combat.
Unless he's about to go into combat.
Yeah.
Kings didn't wear their combat uniforms at the time because they were, even though they weren't that heavy or nearly as heavy as people think they were still heavy enough to be cumbersome in daily life. So if you're not going to go into battle, you don't need to be in uniform. The only reason the soldiers and the guards are in uniform is because they're guards. They're on active duty. So even knights, when they weren't in combat or on duty as guards, would wear regular clothes. Because it's a pain to wear your armor all the time. Like, you need help getting into it. Why would you wear it on a regular basis. So the king should be wearing some of the clothes that I mentioned before. Colorful hose or chausses, a colorful hoopland with nice long sleeves. Like, do your research.
It's like you're getting madder than I was about. You're getting more mad than I was about Xerxes in 300.
Now in
Okay,
Edinburgh.
hold here.
Houses made of wood.
So we're seeing a Scottish village, I think is what this is, right? So first, I'm going to address the houses. Again, thatch roofs on wooden houses is conceptually accurate. However, that's not what they would have looked like. Solid wood houses was not really a popular thing. Instead, you would have, like I said before, wattle and daub. Wattle being a wooden frame, and daub being a mixture of straw, mud, and animal dung mixed together to make a sort of filling paste between the wooden frame. They would then whitewash to keep all the weather to make them weatherproof, and that's where we get that like sort of Tudor look on like old English houses. How they have like the wooden frame with the white in between. That's where that comes from. Is wattle and daub. That's what most houses would have looked like. Either that, or just have an overall whitewashing or daub covering. And if they're this close to the castle, chances are they're important buildings with important trades, so they would be able to afford nicer houses.
Yeah, I was gonna.
What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, like, you're like, oh, this must be like an important place, and in the beginning when you were explaining it, you were like, I'm not sure if this is a Scottish town. It said it was Edinburgh. Edinburgh is the capital of Scotland. So yeah, the castle and everything, like, yeah.
So these houses should be much more colorful, much bigger. They could have multiple floors. Not all houses had to have multiple floors, but they're probably going to be more colorful, have more decorations. They would probably have wooden shingle roofs, not thatch roofs, because wooden shingles were you could just chip pieces out of a log, and that's how you made wooden shingles. So a lot of roofs back then were actually made of wooden shingles, not made of thatch. But again, like I said before, if they were made of thatch, they would be made of little bundles stacked, like back and forth like a typewriter along the roof, and just like held together. So you wouldn't have these long hunks of straw or like this like loose piling. You would have these like bundles, and of course, you know what an alternative word for bundle of twigs is, but you essentially have just these bundles or bushels of straw that would be like stacked across the roof instead of this big pile. So the way they do it is inaccurate, but the conceptualization is accurate. And again, they would be not entirely made of wood, but wattle and daub or covered in drywall, and probably painted to be more colorful. Like the medieval times were a colorful period.
Yeah.
So now that I'm done with that, onto the castle. So, assuming Edinburgh is the capital of Scotland at the time, so it's going to have a big castle where the highest lord of Scotland lives. So the design of the castle is pretty accurate, but it should be painted white. So it should be whitewashed. If you could afford whitewashing, you would probably have it because you'd want to look as rich as possible, and the capital of Scotland would probably have a whitewashed castle. Whitewashing your castle does two things. One, it makes it look nicer because it's expensive and it makes you look rich. Two, it keeps the rain out. It's a form of weatherproofing. So by whitewashing your castle, you're adding another layer of defense against weather. And so that's another thing I want to add. Last thing I want to add is there's a lot of wooden fortifications on the castle. And that's not like what that would be called. Wooden fortifications added on top of stones called hoardings, which are usually temporary. They don't have to be temporary, but they're usually temporary battlements called hoardings. And that's
Are you talking about like these watchtower type things?
Well, like you see on top of the towers of the castle, they have those wooden battlements on top of the stone. Like, look at the castle though, on top of the towers.
Yeah.
That's called hoardings, which is a temporary or non-temporary, but usually temporary wooden defensive structure. That was a thing they had back then, but it usually wouldn't look like that. They would usually have a roof on top, because there's no point in having a defense if you don't have a roof. It didn't have to, but they usually had roofs, so it should have a roof on top. That's a normal thing. And it would just be smarter, and there's no reason why they wouldn't. And then they have a wooden wall around, like a palisade wall around the castle, which is not unheard of. Like 70% of castles, well, maybe not, like 60 or 70% of castles probably were made of wood. At least the majority of castles were made of wood back then. So having a wooden wall is not unheard of. But if you're at the capital, you could probably afford a stone wall, especially since all the peasants have stone walls. The castle should also have a stone wall.
Did you point out, or did you notice as well, like, since we're in the capital, like, they are a lot more colorful, as in, like, shirt-wise, versus, like, when we saw Wallace in them? Like, you got red, kind of yellowish,
a little bit more color, but it should be drastically more colorful than that. Like,
yeah.
Hold on, let me see.
It's an improvement, though, is what I'm saying.
Like, if I look up.
If I keep looking this way, guys, by the way, it's because I'm trying to see, like, how fast the sun is going down so I can try and adjust my lighting for y'all.
So if you go into, like, Google Images and you just look up 13th century clothing, and then you click on any of the artworks from the medieval period, you can see, like, look how just... I don't know, can I share my screen? I don't know if I can.
I don't think you can while I'm also sharing my screen, but I can put it in post. You can also send me the picture on Snap, and I can do it that way. If you want, like, a specific picture.
Yep. But if you just go on to the internet and look up 13th century, or any century of the medieval period, but like 13th, 14th century clothing, or even like 11th or 12th century clothing, you'll see it's super colorful, especially as you get higher into the ranks of the nobility. So all these dark, dismal, dirty gray tones, and like the red is probably the red guy all the way on the right. That's the closest we've seen to what it actually looked like. Like,
yeah,
you don't have to be rich to wear bright red. You could be like a woodworker in the city. It was a colorful period, and I don't know why it's not that hard to find the evidence for this.
Yeah. That's like one thing that I think bothers me the most is like some of the stuff that's like not accurate or bad. It's like it's so easy to like fix that. Like it takes like 2 clicks on Google. Like you said, like you look up 13th century clothing, Google images. Like it's like 2 clicks.
Yeah. Like, and what year was this movie made?
I think it was 1995. Let me look up. Braveheart release date. It was released May 19th, 1995. Yep.
All right. So they don't have the internet quite yet, but they do have access to both the Bayeux Tapestry, which is 1066, the Battle of Hastings, as well as there's another tapestry that depicts the medieval period, and plenty of other historical artworks from other centuries that show that, like, it's like in medieval artwork, it's super colorful, and even though it's faded, it's super colorful. So it's not that hard to just find the research. I don't know. Play the movie.
Among these was Robert, the 17th Earl of Bruce, a leading contender for the crown of Scotland.
Okay, that's accurate.
Yep, Robert the Bruce.
Now where's John?
He should not be wearing furs.
Okay, so now they talk about Scotland being in France. All right.
Here we're
getting better.
Got a good look at the hoardings just there. If you want to go back to that image where they look up at the castle.
Okay. I like the colors they have here too.
Yeah, that's like an understatement of how colorful it was.
So you're talking about these?
So those are what's called hoardings. Now, the ones on the towers should wrap all the way around. I don't know why they stopped just at the corner. But the castle itself, I think they used a real Scottish castle, the remnants of a real castle. So the castle itself looks good. Should be painted white, but that's just budget limits.
Well, I think
you can't paint a real castle white.
If it's a real castle, if they're using a real castle, then it might be that like a lot of the paint has come off, because you can kind of see like here, like there's bits
you can
of
see
white.
Remnants of the white. Like,
so
of course, I understand that you can't paint an existing historical structure.
Yeah,
like that's defiling the historical structure. You have to preserve it.
Yeah.
But the hoardings, so like I'll give them a pass on the whitewash, but the hoardings should go all the way around, and it's just like a couple of like janky wooden boards. Like it should be well made. It should be sturdy and thick. It should have tall crenellations, and crenellations are, the teeth on top of castle walls and towers. Like the little teeth with the gaps in between. That's called crenellation. The tall part is a merlon. The space between is a crenelle. And they should have like 6 foot tall merlons with like 3 foot tall crenelles in between, made of wood, and like a roof, at least a partial roof, to prevent from arrow fire over the top, because English longbowmen were the bane of all their enemies. They were like the snipers of like the marksmen of the medieval period. They were accurate and powerful. And if you didn't have a roof, even a partial roof, you were screwed against English longbowmen. So they should have these tall crenellations, these tall merlons with spacious crenelles, or at least arrow slits in between, and roofs to protect from arrow fire. So the fact that they have hoardings in time of war is good, but that's not, the hoardings are just so weak and flimsy and incomplete. So they should be more covered up. There's not enough protection on those hoardings.
All right. You good?
Yep.
All right.
And again, no fur.
And he says that I speak for all of them.
Oh yeah, here's another thing that I want to point out about the clothing. Nobody's wearing a hat. Like, you saw one guy walk by with a sun hat. That's like a worker's hat right there. But nobody's wearing a hat. And
let me try and see if I can go back.
Until the 1950s, you're out, like, not wearing a hat is like not being fully dressed. So you should either be wearing a hood or a hat. And, maybe it's a bit different in Scotland, but in general, not enough hats or hoods.
Okay. I was trying to find where the hat was, but I couldn't get it.
I was like, could we find like a spot where we could see like a good shot of the soldiers' uniforms?
Yeah, my bad. That work?
Yeah, that's a good one. So what they're wearing is so the helmet that they're wearing is called a kettle hat. And not the guy in the front. The guy in the front's a special case. What they're wearing is called a kettle hat. So for non-knights, like so enlisted soldiers who were not knights, they would wear kettle hats. It was an affordable, widely used form of helmet. And the red, orangish, yellow thing that they're wearing is their surcoat, which is what they wear over their armor to show their coat of arms and their crown colors. Here's the problem. There wasn't really an established army at the time. The way raising an army worked is you would have your knights and your nobles were already military men at the time, so they would be trained cavalrymen at that point. And then you would have your guards of like your castle or your home if you were rich, and they would also be trained. But your regular foot soldiers would be what's the word? Not commission, but would be called to duty, I guess. Would be drafted. Yeah, drafted, I guess is the word. Your regular foot soldiers would be drafted out of the peasantry and common folk of your domain. So your lord would raise or would draft the people who lived on his land, the able-bodied young men who lived on his land, to create his section of the army that would then be hired, or not hired, but they would then be part of the king's army. So it was, again, a feudal system within the military. So the common soldier fought for his lord, and then his lord fought for the king. So every only the king's soldiers wore the king's colors. The common soldiers wore their own regular whatever they could afford, and then the knights or the knights of a nobleman would wear his colors, the lord's colors. So wearing kettle hats and a surcoat doesn't make sense. If you're wearing a kettle hat, you're probably not a knight or a trained soldier. So you're probably a common soldier impressed into the military by your lord. So you're just going to wear whatever armor you can afford, and you're not going to have a surcoat. You're just going to wear your regular clothes and whatever armor you can get.
That makes sense.
If you're wearing a surcoat, you're probably a knight, and so you'd be wearing a knightly helmet. And at this time, that would be a great helm. And there are two types of great helms. I'm not going to go into it, but you'd be wearing a great helm, most likely, among other types of helmets. But the most common in the late 13th century was a great helm. So all of these knights should be wearing great helms, or just not be knights at all. Now, the second thing I want to point out is they're wearing a ton of different like mini plates along their arms and on their waists. They should be wearing chainmail. Lots and lots of chainmail. And what you wore back then, if you were a knight, you would wear under your surcoat something called a what's the word for it? I'm forgetting my words. A halberd. That's what I'm looking for. So a halberd is like a full body suit of chainmail with chainmail sleeves and a torso and legs that go like a 3/4 down. And that would be your primary form of protection. And then over that, you would wear your surcoat or your tabard and fasten that with a belt to distribute the weight more evenly throughout the body. They wouldn't be wearing all these little plates of armor. Like the guy in the front, he's wearing a halberd, or what looks like a halberd with sleeves that are way too big, but he's kind of wearing a halberd. That's more what you would wear. His helmet is stupid, but he's at least got a halberd on underneath his surcoat. The rest of them are wearing all these little plates of steel, and unless you're wearing a coat of plates, which is only in your chest and is usually covered by leather or gambeson, you wouldn't have these little steel plates. The closest you would get at this time to steel armor is maybe a shin guard. And that's still in the experimentation phase with when it comes to armors, like shin guards and gauntlets. So if you had any plates at all, you would have to be rich, ahead of the curve, and a rare exception if you were wearing any steel plate armor other than your helmet. So all these little plates just doesn't make any sense. And then again, the combination of surcoat and kettle hat. If you're wearing a kettle hat, you're probably a common citizen. And then thus you wouldn't have a surcoat. So that's my overall minimal thoughts on the soldiers. Wait, does she live in a hobbit hole? They didn't build their houses in the ground. Oh my god.
It caught me so off guard with that.
Why do they have a cross in the middle of the woods?
That's a good point.
Like, holy places where, like, you couldn't just put a cross randomly somewhere. Like, it had to be either a church or a graveyard or some sort of hallowed ground.
Yeah.
An assault on the
That
king's
knight should
soldiers
not be wearing a cape, nor should he have shoulder armor.
is the same as an assault on the king himself.
I still don't get why this knight is dressed like a lighthouse.
It's because they have to distinguish him somehow in Hollywood, I think.
Yeah. But also, like, he shouldn't be wearing a cape at all. It's just impractical during combat.
Yeah.
And red and white stripes? And that is not what a wooden fort would look like.
Patrol returning, my lord.
Why do you need palisade spikes on the towers if nobody's going to even get there? Whoever designed this fort didn't even understand basic, like, principles of defense. Ugh, no torches, candles, man.
Come in.
Our shields are too big. We're in the era of heater shields, which are like a foot and a half tall, not 3 and 4 feet.
That I have to work for them.
Why are the knights' horses not armored? The horses should be wearing a little bit of armor and a sort of horse version of a surcoat with the knight's coat of arms on it.
That sword is way too fucking big.
And it shouldn't be on his back. You can't draw a sword out of a leather scabbard off of your back unless it's specially altered so that it has a side slit to hold the blade through. On another note, what the heck are these knights wearing on their heads?
I couldn't tell you, man.
Like you know the helmet that's stereotypically associated with the Templars, the great helm.
Yeah,
that's in all the memes. That's what they should be wearing. That was the most popular helmet of this time. Was the
they're doing a crusade.
Like, that's what the knights should be wearing, is great helms.
Yeah.
Like, whatever this is provides almost no protection to the face, or literally no protection to the face, and like it looks like an egg. I don't know where these costume designers got their ideas from.
It looks like a black octopus on his head.
Yeah,
with like
he's got like a leather beard underneath.
Yeah, it's
look at this guy on the right, like in the brownish gray. Like what the heck is he wearing? That's like a big bowl, a big metal bowl that you put fruit in with a little piece on the back.
It's like whenever you wanted to it's literally like whenever you wanted to play knights. When you were like a little kid and you would put like a colander on your head as like your helmet. That's what it looks like they're doing.
Wait, and this guy on the left looks like a bishop. He's like wearing like a bishop's hat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is what, if I had a time machine, this is what I would use it for. Go back in time to 1995 and like tell the costume designers what the heck they're supposed to be like.
That's what you would use the time machine for.
Yes. Because I don't need to actually go back there. I know what it actually looked like well enough to make a realistic movie. Like, just everyone looks so stupid. Hold on, go back to the shoes. hold on. Pause.
Yeah, I got it.
What are those?
Boots.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna explain something right now. Shoes in the medieval period were made entirely of leather, and heels didn't exist at that time. What men or what everybody wore the same kind of shoe, and it was just a flat leather sole with no heel, no insole, no padding, just a flat leather sole. And like they weren't slip on. You had to lace them up with leather laces. And like like hold on. Just I mean oh, I can't share my screen.
Marty
Just go
McFly
on,
became a cobbler and traveled back.
just go onto Google and look up medieval shoes. And like the first couple images.
It's loading. They look like what you would see
No
on like
slip-ons, no heels.
They look like what you
Or
would
the
see on
moccasins.
like Robin Hood or something.
Exactly. Like, of course, some of those are not correct, but
Yeah, because they're like costume.
like, what are those?
What are those?
Hold on, I think one of those guys had a Roman gladius.
I didn't see it. I was looking at my other tab.
Would you agree?
Finally, somebody's wearing a proper helmet.
It only took what? 2 hours about?
2 hours.
My Scots tell me they're archers.
What?
a mile
Okay,
away.
now they're wearing real
Arrows
helmets?
cost money.
That is the dumbest armor I've ever seen.
I just can't get over the fact that Wallace pulled off Bruce's helmet, supposedly. Ah, do you see that?
Stand and take.
Hang on.
I'll die with you.
There's your White Castle.
See, that is a sort of accurate. I don't know what's going on with the roof. I think those are supposed to be hoardings, but they should be extended outward. But
Yeah.
and wait. Why is the wall not even finished?
Where?
Like the surrounding wall around the city?
Oh.
It's
I
not
thought you
even
meant on the
finished.
castle.
No, the castle's
Yeah.
But,
I don't know.
the city wall's not even finished.